Nigeria's presidential and National Assembly elections have come and gone, but there are questions that still linger, especially around data, especially around who was captured at the data and why the transmission of the results as promised by INEC on the IREF portal did not happen as planned. I first of all spoke with Ololade Otayemi, who is the founder of the Orbra Company. Now, he is somebody who understands hardware, software, everywhere. Just kidding. Specifically, he has built phones, meaning he understands hardware and he understands what happens in the phone to make it user-friendly to people. He gives us his perspective, judging from the experience that he had and from the experience of people around him during the election period. Why did INEC, or why was INEC unable to upload the result as promised? That was the first question I asked him.
I really think that INEC would be in the best position to answer that question because it should not be so difficult. And that is just the honest truth. And if we look at the entire process from the hardware that was used for the technology to the software to the web platform, there's so many gaps that we can identify. Uploading results should be the easiest part of this process and the most seamless part of this process. So for example, typically when you're uploading results, you are simply uploading data to a database on the backend through a form or something, and then another set of code picks that data from the database that it has been uploaded to and then displays it on the front end for people to see. This is what we teach children when we're just teaching them how to code from scratch. So it's not rocket science. But when we look at the system that was put in place for the upload of these results, what we saw is that the upload was supposed to be upload of images. Meanwhile, the entirety of an election are numbers. The entire data that we are trying to bring out of an election are numbers. So what should have been requested or required for the presiding officers to upload should have been numbers and not pictures. The pictures are good as evidence to back the numbers, but numbers should have been what should have been required to be uploaded. That's one. Two is that uploading this should not have taken so long at all. It's as simple as immediately the election is over. And this was what the INEC chairman promised us in November last year, that the upload will be real time. Real time meaning that as the event is unfolding, it's not rocket science. So when you have the numbers, you simply punch the numbers through a form into the database and it accumulates it, calculates it, and gives us the result on the front end. And we should be able to see that instantly. In fact, the funny thing is that this part of the process does not require so much computing power. It does not require so much server power, this part of the process. There are other parts of the process that require a lot of server power and computing. But this part of imputing data from 176,000 polling units does not require the largest amount of bandwidth or the largest amount of computing power to do. It's simple forms and queries, straightforward, right? But the question then becomes, why wasn't this done? Why was this not put in place? Why were I'll use my own polling unit, for example, the presiding officer, because in my polling unit, people insisted that we wouldn't allow the officers leave until they uploaded our result. And you'll be shocked that the presiding officer told us that, one, they were not told to upload results, which you then ask the question, really? That was the whole essence of this whole BVAS and IREF system. Two, when we insisted that, no, you're supposed to upload the results, and we said, okay, log into the platform for upload, we then I realized because I'm also an IT professional, I have experience with both hardware, software. I used to make smartphones back in the days. So I'm like, we looked at it and we realized that the platform where they were supposed to log in to upload the results, trying to log in, the platform wasn't even communicating with the server at all. So that means it's either the platform was never connected to a server or it was connected and the server was severed for some reason. So the question then becomes why, right? So with all of that, we then began to find out later that a lot of polling units across the nation could not upload their results. And even till now, as we speak, a lot of results have been uploaded. Even with the results that have been uploaded, we have cases where people are able to upload their faces as results. I mean, that has already scattered or destroyed the integrity of the data that is being uploaded. If you want data uploaded through a system and to a system, you have to be clear. It has to be specific and it has to be actual. It's not just images. The images are good for forensic evidence and backup evidence, not as the data themselves.
So, from what you have said, it can be deduced that it's a challenge of both human fault in judgment as well as technical errors, right?
You are very correct. So, in technology, we talk about four critical things in this kind of scenario. We talk about the people, talk about the processes, talk about the data, and then talk about the technology. Every four of these components in this case had serious and significant gaps that were not put into place. So the process was already faulty from the beginning. One of the things that I realized when we started the accreditation process was that one, the quality of the device that was being used was very low. So, and the impact of that is two things. The first impact is that it does not actually do the authentication that it should do to be able to accredit people. So a lot of people in my polling unit, for example, or maybe like 70 to 80% could not use their fingerprint. They had to use facials. Then even the facials that were being used was not facial recognition. It was just taking pictures to save to a database which can then be viewed later. The danger with that is then the second part, which is you are increasing the amount of time it would take to go through that process. Because if the accreditation process was done right, people that should not even be able to vote would not get on the queue to go through the process of collecting ballot and voting in the first place. So what that means is whoever wasn't accredited properly had already voted. Even if you say you are going to go back later to check the picture against the PVC, the person would have already voted. So how do you then account for that vote? Under which party would you deduct that vote from? I don't know if you're seeing the issue with the processes here. The second thing is, apart from the quality of the technology, the people themselves, right, were not adequately trained and informed as to how to utilize the technology and what to do. Well, a lot of people were saying maybe they were trained, maybe there were issues with the device, maybe there were issues with the server. There are a number of school of thoughts, but the biggest question still remains: why were they not trained, and why couldn't they upload the results?
If you were in the room with the INEC chairman, former President Muhammad Buhari, and other big stakeholders in the electoral process, somebody who is both hardware and software professional, I mean, what recommendations would you give to them regarding setting the record straight and getting it right for the next election and, of course, subsequent elections?
The electoral process needs to take into consideration a lot of things. When there's something we call process design, and in process design, you look at every component as an individual component, then you look at every component as a collective component. Now, I'll use an example of my polling unit because that was the first-hand experience that I had during this election. In my estate, we had 3 polling units. One of those polling units had about 3,000 registered voters. My own polling unit had about 750 registered voters. Another polling unit had a lesser number. I'm not sure how many now, but I know that about 400 people voted in that polling unit. So, in my polling unit, for example, we had 1 Beavers machine, we had 1 polling booth, we had 2 stamps, that's the 2 operating stamp, which one was being used by the INEC official to stamp the paper, and one was supposed to be used by us in the process of voting. Now, that was for my polling unit where we had 750 registered voters. The other polling unit that had 3,000 registered voters had the same exact amount of resources. That is already a flaw in the process design. What that means is that It's either the amount of resources that was deployed to my polling unit was too much, or the amount of resources that was deployed to the other polling unit with the 3,000 people was too little. And from the process design, you would be able to say how long it would take for an individual to be able to go from accreditation to collecting their ballots to casting their vote. And with that, you should be able to know how many people that polling unit will be able to service within an amount of time based on the amount of resources. And that is what will then determine how many resources will be deployed to that polling unit. I don't know if that is making sense. So looking at that alone, we should be able to tell you that, okay, this polling unit needs 5 beavers machine. Because in my own estate, the polling unit had about 3,000 registered voters. Only 900 of them could vote. And those 900 were able to finish voting at about 1 a.m. in the morning. That excludes the time for counting the votes after voting. So the fact that the process design was already not done appropriately would affect, it will have a ripple effect on every other part of the process. Now, another part of the process that I realized that wasn't done well was the fact that the presiding officer in every polling unit had to sign and stamp each ballot paper. What that means is that in my own polling unit, for example, the presiding officer was expected to sign at least 1,500 ballot papers, sign and stamp. Now, this presiding officer is supposed to be the officer in charge of that polling unit to make critical decisions when critical decisions need to be made. Now, fatigue would typically set in if an individual was made to sign his own signature 1,500 times in a day. Now, that's small. Now, let's go to the polling unit that had about 3,000 registered voters. That also means that presiding officer is expected to sign and stamp his signature at least 9,000 times in that day. Typically, fatigue would naturally set in. And with that, there is no way in that polling unit everybody will be able to vote because the presiding officer will get tired. Like I said, they ended the vote at 900 people. They are human beings. They are not running on batteries. So those are some of the issues that we've identified here with process. The process design was already flawed. The second thing is technology. When we talk about the technology, the amount of resources that we had to work with on this for this election compared to the quality of technology that we had, the gap is too wide. If we do an IT audit of this election, it wouldn't look good in every sense of the word. So when we're talking about technology, we need to be sure that because what technology is supposed to do is supposed to scale whatever it is that you have that is working. So for example, if typically you'll be able to attend to say 300 people in a polling unit normally, when you introduce technology, say those 300 people, you'll be able to attend to them in 1 hour. When you introduce technology, you should be able to attend to those 300 people in 2 minutes or 5 minutes. Or you now attend to 3,000 people in 10 minutes or 1 hour. I don't know if that so that's what technology is supposed to do. So when we're now saying we're introducing technology and it's not translating to an increase in efficiency, then the introduction of technology has already failed on arrival. The reason why I'm saying that is because every time we want to introduce technology to any system in Nigeria, we need to look at it from end to end. And I think it's high time we also begin to demand accountability.
Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you, Mercy. One of the other things we would see is that people would have more faith in tech companies.
Tech Hub for a smarter you.